The story begins with the strongest adventurers party called the Silver Wing Battalion trying to take down a massive ice dragon. The battle begins as the dragon swings its tail across the field, but the adventurers dodge it and fight back by using their strongest attack spells. But they do no damage to the massive beast. In response, the dragon fires back with an ice breath attack and forces them to cast defense magic, but its attack is too strong for the party's mage, and it breaks through her barrier easily. But just before the dragon's attack can hit her, the party's cook, Dennis, rushes in and blocks it with his arm. But despite that, the dragon's attack injures the mage's arm. Seeing this, Dennis uses his magic to craft a healing potion and helps the injured mage and boosts her morale. Watching all this, the vice captain of the party, Katie, nods in approval with a smile. But the party's Captain Vigo seems to be jealous of their cook for some reason. In frustration, Vigo summons a magical dagger and slashes through the dragon's eye, which makes the dragon go berserk, and it releases a bunch of dark lightning bolts to attack the adventurers. Katie and the captain try one more time to attack the monster together, but their efforts fail miserably, and the whole party is forced to retreat. Later, the captain calls for an urgent meeting to go over some important matters. Though the vice captain's seat seems to be empty, Dennis breaks the silence by asking why they were called in. And that's when the captain speaks up, blaming him for their recent failure. He says they could have won if Dennis hadn't stepped in and scared the dragon off with his dread voice skill. Dennis protests against him, making it clear that Vigo was the one who ordered him to do it. But Vigo outright refuses it and claims that he would never make a rookie decision like that. Dennis recalls that their goal was to collect the rare drops from the dragon. But once it went into rage mode, that was no longer possible. With the team stuck in a dangerous spot, it was Vigo who told him to use the intimidation skill called the Dread Voice. They might have failed the quest, but thanks to that move, everyone made it out alive. At the time, Dennis respected Vigo for making such a bold call, but now it feels like the captain is just using that moment to put all the blame on him. Vigo even goes as far as accusing Dennis of being a spy from a rival party and finally kicks the poor cook out of the group. Dennis looks around, hoping someone will speak up for him, but the entire squad stays quiet, too afraid to say anything in front of the big boss. Being left with no choice, Dennis also quietly goes along with it. Vigo then calls the big guy a lowly chef, which pushes him over the edge. Dennis finally decides to stand up for himself, powering up his butcher knives with magic to get ready for a fight. The captain keeps throwing insults at him and says that even though both of them are level 99, Dennis is still just a cook who has no place in their party. As the tension rises, both of them unleash a dominating aura, and just when it looks like a battle is about to break out inside the Silver Dragon HQ, Dennis calls it quits. He slams the table and says that this party is no longer his headache, then walks out to begin a dream journey as a chef. As he walks through the busy streets, Dennis looks back, knowing it's time to say goodbye to the royal capital. Just then, a little girl bumps into him and accidentally lets go of her balloon. Dennis quickly drops his bag and jumps up to catch it, hands it back to her, and advises her that she shouldn't let go of things that are important to her. Meanwhile, Vigo watches everything from a distance and flashes an evil smile as he quietly decides to put his real plan into motion. Just as Dennis steps out of the city, Katie comes running after him. While Dennis keeps walking, she tries to stop him and asks who will take care of alchemy and make the medicine and food for them now that he's leaving. Dennis tells her that someone else with the same skills will take his place soon, so she should find her meals somewhere else. Katie follows after him and tries to convince him, saying that their party became the strongest in the world because of him, and most members still do not even know he has been supporting from the rear this whole time. She makes one last desperate attempt to stop him, and when that does not work, she asks him to cook at least one final dinner, and maybe a few more meals. Dennis looks at her and asks if that is really all she can think about. Katie realizes that nothing she says will change his mind, so she asks him what he plans to do now. And Dennis shares his dream to open a restaurant and thanks her for letting him join Silver Wing. He remembers how Vigo was jealous of how close Dennis was with Katie, and it always seemed like he was interested in her. Dennis says sorry for not being able to stay and tells her goodbye as he leaves his adventuring life behind. As the story continues, Dennis finally arrives in a small town where he plans to open his restaurant. He begins looking for supplies and walks into a shop, where the owner Polvo tries to trick him into buying an overpriced fridge called an icebox. Just before Dennis makes the purchase, he remembers something from his favorite book, How to Open a Restaurant for Retired Adventurers. He quickly opens it to confirm that it is better to keep the starting costs low. Then he remembers that he can use ice magic and tells the shopkeeper he won't be needing the icebox after all. After leaving the shop, Dennis proudly holds up his book because he plans to follow it word for word. He buys an abandoned property at a very low price, treats the local suppliers with proper respect, and then purchases pots for his kitchen. Just when he thinks he has everything ready to begin, he notices a page in the book that suggests hiring a server instead of working alone. At that moment, he sees a crowd gathered around a slave merchant. The man is selling a slave, a girl who was once the daughter of a noble family, but her parents were defeated and exiled. The slave trader speaks highly of her in order to sell her for a high price, and the people in the crowd make all kinds of disturbing comments about her, which makes Dennis feel bad. But he tells himself that he can't help everyone. However, when the girl lifts her face and looks at him, Dennis suddenly sees a reflection of his past self in her eyes. People start placing their bids from around 300,000, going up to 800,000. Dennis suddenly goes overboard and makes the highest offer of 1 million, which leaves the entire crowd speechless. The slave trader becomes excited and is about to sell the girl to Dennis, but out of nowhere, Polvo steps in and offers 1.5 million. Unable to tolerate the creepy man, Dennis immediately raises his bid to 2 million. The bidding continues and crosses 4 million, and in the end, Dennis spends all his money to buy the girl, which leaves him with almost nothing for himself. After that, he takes her to get a change of clothes, and she looks very cute in her new outfit. That evening, the girl quietly follows Dennis. Even though he tells her to stay close, she still ends up getting lost. She gets pushed around, bumps into people again and again, and gets scolded by them. No matter where she looks, all she sees are monsters standing in a cold and unfamiliar world. She stands still, clenching tightly onto her dress, and just then Dennis finds her and tells her she made him worry by getting lost, bringing her back to his place. He even apologizes for walking too fast for her. The girl finally says a few words and asks him why he bought her. Dennis replies that it was because she reminded him of something from his past. He then makes sure she feels comfortable and asks for her name. At first, she tells him to just call her slave, but when he gently insists, she finally tells him her name is Aitlier. Dennis politely introduces himself as well, and when she asks what she's supposed to do, he tells her she can use the second floor however she wants, and that she's free to leave if she ever wishes to. While the girl looks at him in disbelief, her stomach growls loudly, so Dennis smiles and tells her to wait while he cooks something up. The chef works with great skill, neatly adding one ingredient after another, putting together a sparkling dish within seconds. The girl watches everything he does, and the moment she takes a spoonful of the food, her eyes light up with joy, and she quickly finishes the plate while shedding tears. Dennis understands that the girl must have gone through a lot, so he chooses not to ask anything about her past until she feels ready to open up to him. He smiles as he watches her enjoy the meal. But as he asks her how it tastes, Aitlier ends up stuffing herself too much and begins choking on the food, making some strange noises that leave Dennis concerned about what will happen if someone hears those. The next morning, Aitlier has already cleaned the entire place, making it shine. Dennis gives her a set of cooking clothes and starts having her taste the dishes he makes. He involves her in every little task, and instead of trailing behind him at a distance, the girl now begins walking side by side with him. Once the preparations are done, Dennis raises his voice with energy and even makes her bump fists with him. He decides to name the place Adventurer's Restaurant and begins explaining Aitlier's new duties. He tells her that she is now their poster girl, and Aitlier even starts pretending that she would act like a waitress. Watching her get so motivated makes Dennis feel proud and genuinely happy, and he takes one last look around to check that everything is in order. After confirming that they are finally ready to open, he shouts loudly, asking for his first customer to show up soon. He hopes to get them hooked on his food so they keep coming back to eat 3 times a day, and most importantly, he hopes they actually pay him since he is now completely broke. Just then, the restaurant door slides open and an adventurer walks in, dressed in some retro-style armor. Seeing the customer suited from head to toe in heavy armor without a single gap, Dennis goes speechless. But then he remembers the guidebook's lesson, which says that sometimes troubled customers who don't want to be bothered come by, so one should respect their boundaries and make their stay comfortable. With that in mind, Dennis smiles at him and tells Aitlier to bring a cup of water. While the knight sits down and reads the menu quietly, Dennis stares at him intensely, thinking the knight will give him a challenging dish to make, but he shyly points to the small rice bowl and then a topping. Dennis asks him if he wants anything else, but the knight strongly refuses, so after he asks him if he is a light eater, and he says no, Dennis quickly realizes he's just broke. After that, Dennis sighs and lets the guy know he's going to cook up a katsudon, but the knight's voice shakes as she explains she doesn't have enough money. Being irritated, Dennis says a strong guy needs to eat well, but after processing for a second, he realizes that he heard a girl's voice inside the bulky helmet. A few minutes later, the lady knight named Henrietta opens up to him that her party also booted her and calls them horrible because they said the reason was that female knights aren't strong and only become a burden, so they don't need one in their party. She says gender has nothing to do with skill, and Dennis agrees, but she also admits she is only level 23 at the moment, and he thinks she is doing well for her level. Then, she gets all excited about the strongest party, Silver Wing, because their vice captain is also a female swordswoman like her. Henrietta fangirls over the legendary Crimson Swift Sword, who some consider to be the strongest female swordswoman ever born. But Dennis mumbles that she can be a real pain, and when she asks what that means, he pretends he said nothing. Next, Henrietta confesses she's been looking for a party without talking, so they don't figure out she is a girl. But it's pretty hard to join a party without actually talking to them, and now she's out of both money and work. After finishing her therapy session, Dennis serves her the mouth-watering katsudon and tells her to enjoy it while it's hot, and pay him back some other time. Wasting no time, Henrietta's eyes sparkle the moment she bites into the crispy cutlet, and it tastes so good she stuffs her cheeks and calls it the best food in the world. When she thanks him after eating, he tells her to become a regular if she wants to thank him, and Henrietta is up for it if it wasn't for the fact that she can't earn money without a party. Hearing that, he gets the idea to ask his customers if they need a female knight, and asks her to come eat again soon so he can tell her if he has found a group. Before long, a party of guys comes to the restaurant and also gets surprised by how delicious all the food is, and the little waitress is pretty cute too. They give Dennis a compliment, which makes him happy, and he asks Aetlier if she's happy that they called her cute as well. But she silently walks away, showing zero emotion, though she still looks much happier than before as she shyly serves a nice old lady. Just then, Dennis overhears the guys saying it's time for their next adventure, so he asks them if they're a party and tells them he knows a swordswoman looking to join. Hearing that it's a girl and she's quite skilled, their leader is more than happy to recruit her, and he tells Dennis she can join as soon as the next day. Dennis is a little surprised by how fast they agreed, and the guy explains that his party desperately needs a strong attacker. Later that evening, Henrietta is in disbelief at how quickly Dennis found her a party and thanks him, saying she will show her gratitude by spending her first paycheck at his restaurant. However, Dennis thinks it over a bit and says even though he found them for her, she should be more careful about which party she joins. But before he explains what he means, she tells him it's no big deal, and she won't be able to do anything if she sweats over every tiny detail. Seeing that she has made her decision, he serves her another delicious dish that melts all of Henrietta's worries away, and she promises to pay back his kindness while awkwardly talking and munching with her mouth open. When she wonders out loud what she should order tomorrow, he realizes she might really eat every meal at his place, and with that, they say their goodbyes. That night, while Dennis and Aetlier clean up in the back, the last two customers talk about how good his cooking is, and right after that, the girls discuss the rumor going around about a party of guys that recruits solo female adventurers, and then assaults them after taking them deep in the dungeon. That instantly catches Dennis's attention, and he hears the girl mention that the guys haven't been caught because they leave the girl there to hide evidence, and move to the next town after they do it 2 or 3 times. After listening to the whole story, the party of 4 guys comes to his mind, but he hopes they're not the bad guys. The following day, after Henrietta introduces herself, their leader, Still, and the 3 other guys introduce themselves back. Still tells her to stay relaxed around him like everyone else, even though he is technically the leader. With that, they head to the forest. Henrietta asks Still what the quest is, and he tells her it is just a simple gathering request. Hearing that they only need to go inside and collect some items, Henrietta grows curious about what those items are, but the guys say they will explain inside. But she decides to go along with them to avoid making things awkward. Inside, she quickly defeats all the monsters on the first level, and the guys give her lots of compliments, which make her blush. But when Still says it's time to go deeper, she feels very happy that her party is relying on her, unlike before when she was judged just for being a girl. She thinks things will work out great with her new party, not knowing that the fake smiles plastered on their face disappear when she's not looking. As the party goes deeper, they trigger a trap that summons a giant golem, but Henrietta jumps right in and slices its arm in an instant, and she continues her job as the main damage dealer for hours until she gets so tired that her legs give out. However, still acts surprised she's already tired, and she reminds him he said their destination wasn't that deep, but the leader says they are almost there, so she pushes herself all the way till they reach a crystal mine. There, the guys explain that they came here to gather the blue crystals called memory crystals and immediately start collecting them. Hearing that, Henrietta breathes a sigh of relief and sits down looking exhausted. So still asks the mage Marmok to cast some recovery magic on her, but instead, he shocks her with a stun spell that makes her body very weak, and when she tries to grab her sword, Still stomps on her hand and kicks it away. Henrietta quickly realizes that she has been stunned as Still steps on her and thanks her for being so dumb and easy to flatter. But Marmok defends her and says that it is because she is so dumb that they are going to make some nice memories with her. Looking at her with nasty eyes, Still says swordswomen are the best kind of prey because they have nice bodies, and gives her the good news that he will let her go after his gang has had their fun for an hour. Marmok wishes her luck on getting rescued, because she won't be able to return under the effect of his stun. At that moment, Henrietta regrets not listening to Dennis's advice and being more careful when she noticed the group acting shady. Then, they start taking off her heavy armor piece by piece, and Still makes it crystal clear that no one will come for her, no matter how much she screams, and right as she loses all hope. The guys notice a strange noise which could be another party. As soon as Still orders Handok to check it out, a giant rock comes flying and smashes right into him. The guys stare in confusion at the monster with two butcher knives and a bag on his face. As their hearts pound, they wonder if it is a monster or a very beefy creep with big kitchen knives. But Still quickly orders Marmok to cast Search and find a weakness in his panic. His spell fails and he realizes the butcher's level is too high for him to find a weakness. So while Still finds it unbelievable that it is possible, the butcher flashes behind him and one hit from his knife sends the man flying into the wall and leaves the others shaking. They try to escape, but the butcher gives them the beating they deserve, while Henrietta wonders who the strangely skilled chef saving her is and blacks out. Later that evening, she tells Dennis everything that happened and that she woke up in the guild's waiting room, and says she couldn't say thanks to her buff hero with cleavers. Dennis understands how tough it was, and she also reveals that weirdly enough, her attackers were found neatly tied up outside the dungeon's entrance, and after the guild dug into it, it was found that all of them had a bounty on their heads. She admits it all felt like a dream, and she's learned her lesson to pick her teammates carefully in the future, like he told her. But Dennis feels guilty as well for not looking into them beforehand, as Henrietta claims all he did was help find her a party. Her tummy growls very loudly, so even though she panics that she is still broke, Dennis asks her to order whatever she wants without holding back. Hearing that, she shyly orders the Supreme Hajin steak set, which freaks out Dennis because it is the most expensive item on the menu. So she instantly backs down and settles for the cheapest item. However, Dennis says she can't take her order back and tells Aetlier to take the rest of the day off and join her for dinner. Just then, the regulars drop in as well and order Palama gratin. After a few moments of cooking with precision, Dennis serves the Supreme Hajin steak set that makes Henrietta and Aetlier smile in pure happiness. Right then, the girls ask him why he was closed the last 2 days because it's bad for new businesses like his restaurant, and he explains he had some important business. Curious, Henrietta notices that he looks a lot like her hero from behind, but before she can ask him, another customer comes in. The next morning, Henrietta keeps talking non-stop, and when she finally asks Dennis something, he replies that he did not think she was even speaking to him. After that, he smoothly changes the subject and asks what she wants to eat. She goes with sorcery ramen, and the chef quickly gets to work. While preparing the meal, he admits he was actually listening the whole time and then brings the conversation back to her question, asking why she wants to hide her gender. When Henrietta has no answer, Dennis tells her to go with whatever feels right to her and then presents the steaming bowl of sorcery ramen she ordered. Henrietta quietly takes his advice to heart and gets up from her seat. She asks to borrow the back room for a moment and quickly removes all her armor inside. When she returns, she is wearing a completely different outfit. While walking back, she thinks about how people often forget who they are. But instead of falling into that, she now understands that being herself feels much better. Even Aetlier nods in approval at her new getup. which makes Henrietta blush with excitement. Henrietta then starts eating and enjoys every single bite of the food. Dennis watches her with a smile, glad to see her that excited. But he suddenly brings up a question and asks if she is looking to join a party. He reminds her that once she finishes her meal, she needs to find a job and start paying off her tab. The moment Henrietta hears that the chef is actually keeping a tab, she flips out and starts making a huge fuss. While the chaos continues, the door slides open and a shiny adventurer steps inside, calmly takes a seat, and hides behind the menu while getting ready to order. Dennis glances at the new customer and finds himself confused, unsure if the person is a handsome guy or a cute girl. When the customer asks what tastes good around here, Dennis confidently replies that everything is up to the mark. But the vague answer only makes it harder for the guests to choose. After a brief complaint, the chef recommends the Vritra Katsudon, but the customer immediately turns it down, saying he is not in the mood for rice. Henrietta jumps in with a few suggestions, starting with her favorite pasta, then moving on to kelpai udon, but nothing seems to catch the guests' interest. Watching this, Dennis grows increasingly annoyed as his patience begins to run out. Henrietta quickly steps in again, this time trying to calm the chef down by explaining that kids can be pretty indecisive sometimes. Right then, Aitlier walks over to the customer and suggests going for fried rice if he really cannot make up his mind. The blue-haired guest takes the suggestion and places an order for fried rice, which makes Dennis smile as he gets back to the kitchen. He prepares the dish with his usual finesse, cooking it perfectly and topping it off with a few shrimps. The moment the customer tastes the first spoonful, he stops in awe, completely melting under the rich, delicious flavor. As the boy continues to eat, Dennis brings up what he noticed earlier and points out how the customer had entered while sighing and looking like he needed someone to talk to. The boy replies that it is nothing in particular, and Dennis tells him that it is fine if he doesn't feel like sharing. Still, the boy decides to open up and says that the real problem is with how low the level of people around him is. His words leave everyone, including Dennis, stunned as the boy gives off the vibe of someone who enjoys praising himself. The new kid then asks Dennis if he wants to hear what exactly he meant, and even though Dennis refuses, the boy starts talking anyway. He explains that the people around him have a weak mindset and only focus on being praised rather than pushing themselves to grow into a truly top-tier party. Dennis looks at Henrietta and tells her to have some shame, while Henrietta frowns and complains that the chef gets way too rude sometimes. Before they can continue, the new boy slams his hands on the table and stands up, clearly wanting everyone to hear him as he yells that he cannot stand those unmotivated adventurers and finds that kind of attitude unforgivable. He then starts bluffing again and says that when he spoke like this to his party, they kicked him out, which makes Dennis feel awkward as he wonders why his restaurant keeps attracting outcasts from everywhere. Henrietta replies that she has no idea either, but the boy just keeps talking, confidently declaring that he will soon become strong enough to join Silverwind and end up as their most powerful wizard. Dennis advises him to be careful, or he might end up alone, and once the boy finishes eating, he pays up and leaves, introducing himself as Vivia Stronge and saying he will order shrimp fried rice next time. The boy shows up again for another meal and places his order right away. As usual, he keeps talking non-stop and announces that he has decided to join the strongest party around here, called the Night Mist Troop. He boasts about having many advanced skills and claims that it will not take long before he makes it into Silver Wing. Dennis soon brings over the food, and the boy continues fantasizing about his future with Silver Wing, while Dennis quietly hopes that the kid finds a reliable party that actually helps him grow into a dependable adventurer. Dennis then asks about his first quest, and the boy explains that he is gathering taste synthesis materials from somewhere around the 5th floor. Hearing that makes Dennis a little uneasy, so he uses his search skill and finds out that the boy is only level 17. While that is quite high for his age, Dennis knows the 5th floor is meant for people at least in their mid-30s. He asks the boy if he does not think that is a bit too deep for him, but the boy confidently replies that some of the most elite members of the group will be supporting him. Dennis remembers how the boy kept bluffing earlier about knowing all kinds of advanced skills, but now he is almost sure the kid must have only read about them in books and convinced himself he could use them. A person's level reflects the number and quality of skills they possess, and if he truly had so many, his level would be much higher. Vivia then says that it only shows how much the party expects from him, though Dennis still appears concerned. The boy quickly adds that a chef like him wouldn't understand since he probably never even stepped into a dungeon, so Mr. Chef just plays along. even though the last time he went in, it was down to the 37th floor. Before leaving, the boy says he will return next time for crab fried rice. A while later, Aetlier and Dennis head out for some shopping, with the adorable little girl carefully counting eggs and meat to make sure they do not forget anything. While she stays focused on the groceries, Dennis appears lost in thought and worries about Vivia, who must have reached the 5th floor by now. He wonders if it was a mistake to let the boy go, and whether he should have stopped him no matter what, but eventually shakes off the thought. Aetlier tugs at his clothes and says she hopes Vivia is safe. Just then, two adventurers walk past them, chatting about Vivia's fate and how their captain, Hopper, had deliberately sent the boy to the 5th floor just to see if he would survive. Hearing this, Dennis immediately rushes toward them, grabs both men, and drags them into a nearby back alley before slamming them onto the ground. The adventurers pull out their weapons and introduce themselves as members of the Night Mist Troop, but despite that, they are the ones who end up getting beaten down, while Dennis walks away with the information he came for. When Dennis returns to Aetlier, he apologizes and tells her that they will have to close the restaurant for the day. He finds her just as worried, and she quietly asks him to be safe. Dennis smiles at her and tells her not to worry about him at all. Meanwhile, down on the 5th floor, Vivia runs wildly through the dungeon, shouting at a group of goblins to stay away from him. The adventurers who had come with him had already left him behind, claiming it was some kind of test and that their captain, Hopper, had placed high hopes on him. Vivia panics, thinking he must at least reach the 3rd level to be safe, but in the middle of running, he trips, and suddenly vines start growing around his feet. He struggles to break free, but the vines seem to be enchanted, and magic pulses through them. He tries to cast a spell to break the magic, but his mind goes completely blank, and he cannot remember the incantation. He starts freaking out and worries that the goblins will shred him apart once they catch up. Just before they reach him, a girl shows up and saves him, cutting the vines and casting the right spell. As she pulls him to safety, Vivia looks up at her and thanks her, impressed that she knows how to use spell-breaking magic. The girl calmly tells him this isn't the time to relax and they need to find a way out. When Vivia asks if she got lost too, she explains that her party left her behind after she fell into the same trap, and no one ever came to help. Then she tells him that they should wait together in case someone comes to rescue him. But Vivia quietly admits that no one is coming for him either. As they sit and talk, the two slowly realize how alike they really are. Just then, the goblins get near, and Vivia immediately tries to act like a hero, sharing his plan to serve as a decoy so Cynthia can have time to escape. Although she protests and urges him to wait for help, he insists that he owes her his life and runs off before she can stop him. As he faces the goblins, he shouts that he wants her to be the one who lives on, and then throws himself in front of the monsters. He forces himself to stay calm, hoping Cynthia is getting away safely, and casts a defensive spell called Palm to hold the goblins back. The spell works for a moment, but the creatures eventually break through and charge toward him. Right at that moment, Dennis appears wearing a budget mask and uses one of his skills to trap the goblins inside a cooking pot. Vivia screams in shock, pointing at him and calling him a monster while repeatedly casting his palm spell out of pure panic. Dennis scolds him, and it finally hits Vivia that the masked man is Dennis. Dennis rips off the mask and asks what the point of wearing it even was before smacking Vivia on the head for pulling off a suicide stunt right in front of the goblins. As Dennis begins dragging him along, Vivia quietly mentions that there is someone else with him. He worries that Cynthia might have already run off, but Dennis says he did not see anyone on his way here. The boy points toward a nearby hollow, saying she might still be there, but when they look inside, all they find are skeletal remains of someone who had likely died a long time ago. Later at the guild, they learn that the girl was Cynthia Dredd, an adventurer who got separated from her party 13 years ago on the 5th floor, and no one had heard from her since. The two of them gather her remains and bury her in a grave. Dennis says he has heard myths about fallen adventurers, whose spirits sometimes appear to protect the living, and Vivia breaks down crying. He thanks her for saving him and promises that he will keep visiting her grave and one day become the #1 wizard who protects girls like her. On their way back to the restaurant, Dennis lightly smacks the boy on the back, telling him to cheer up so Cynthia can rest